Strength, resilience, and beauty. These are a few of the words that explain and define the two beautiful ladies I have in the studio with me today. Both of them are autism moms. They have their beautiful journeys, and it's my complete honor and pleasure to have them because I know they have very busy lives and they have a lot of responsibilities, but they are here to share their journeys with all of us so that we can learn and get inspired. My first guest today is a software engineer, and she is a mother to a beautiful boy, and her name is Humaira. Welcome.
Thank you
So
so
much for coming. It's an honor. I know you have a very busy life, so I am very pleased and I'm excited
It's
to
my
listen to
pleasure.
your story. My second guest is with an MBA background. She's intelligent. I can say that by looking at her. She's a mother to two beautiful girls and a boy who's on the spectrum. Hina, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure.
Thank you
And
so
I am really looking forward to learn a lot from your experiences because I know you have a very long journey, and there's a lot to learn.
Sure.
Hina, I'll start with you. Uh, since you have three kids, you have daughters, and then you have a boy. I'm sure you must be really excited when he was born because it's always excitement when it's a boy after two girls in our culture. But the thing is that you have had a journey with motherhood with your daughters. So when your son was born, at what time you started noticing the signs, and being a mother earlier, did it help you to pick up the symptoms quicker?
As you've mentioned that I had two girls,
Yeah.
and it's always said that girls are different from boys. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they say that, boys, no, it's okay if he's not spoken yet. Boys speak a little late, they're late
Yeah.
boomers.
Yeah.
So that's how I took it light initially. And because he was reaching all his milestones on time, in fact, before time. So everything was going fine. He spoke also on time, mama, dada,
All the
dudu,
words.
all that was happening. And suddenly there seemed to be a regression. At that time, I didn't know the word regression per se. However, when we went to India, my mom told me that you should get his ears checked. He does not turn back, he does not respond to his name. I didn't take it very well that time, though it was my mom. I said, no, it's okay, it's just naughty. And but it stuck with me, and I came back to Dubai and went to the pediatrician, and she told me, the usual pediatrician for his vaccination, that I have my doubts, Hina. Go and check for ASD. I didn't, that term did not strike at all to me. I said, I'm putting him in the nursery, let's see how it goes. She said, yeah, go. And then when I put him in the nursery, incidentally, it happened to be Miss Savi, who has a son.
Yeah.
She's no more, by the way.
Yeah.
And she told me that, we should take his speech therapy. Till then, I was still living in a bubble. I was not sure of whatever it was happening, but then the bell was striking somewhere. Then I started my studies, and I started researching. I took him to a doctor, did all his blood tests, did his hearing test. Everything came out neat. Then, and all this I did alone without my husband, because
Oh.
he was not on page. Like, he was
In denial.
in denial. He was in denial, and he was quiet. He didn't stop me, but he was not with me on this.
likewise.
So,
So the symptoms, they kept getting clear, or
no, they were getting, in fact, it started getting severe, as in he was regressing. Those words had also stopped after going to the nursery.
so what were the 3-4 major red flags that you were seeing
Not
at
responding to the name, running. It's still a
Eloping.
problem with Ibrahim, my son. He elopes. I have lost count of the number of times I have lost him. And eloping, not being excited after meeting me, or crying after seeing me. So
No
these
emotions,
were, yeah. And then finally, it was at a neuro pediatrician's clinic that these words were said to me that, I'm sorry, ma'am, but your son has autism.
Aw.
So that was on my 10th anniversary.
Wedding anniversary.
Yes.
And how old was exactly Ibrahim at that
He
time?
was 3 years.
He was young.
Yeah, he was
He
3
was young.
years.
So
Yeah.
that's how it
Yeah.
entered your life.
Yeah.
Humaira, how was it with Umar? Umar is your only son, so
Yeah.
it was the first time.
So there was no comparison in our case. So
Yeah,
everything
it's
was new.
even more confusing.
Yeah, it was confusing. Someone said that, like Hina said, that boys develop late, speech
Yeah.
comes late. Plus, you're living in isolation. There is no one there in Dubai with you. So maybe that's the problem. He watches TV all the time. But as a mother, there's a gut feeling that something is wrong. I was seeing red flags because I took him to a playgroup when he was 2. And I used to see the difference among the others, that he's not putting his hands for sensory play, he's not following direction, he just likes to do his own thing. So for 1 year, I was just asking people, going back to Pakistan, seeing his pediatrician. He said no, he's not autistic. He said straight out, autistic children. He gave me some very severe symptoms
Okay.
which were not
There in Umar.
visible in Umar at that time. But when he was 3, a pediatrician I saw, I was back in Abu Dhabi at that time. She said that I'm a little bit, I'm having some doubts. You should get him checked from a psychiatrist or a neurologist. So then I took him to American Center of Psychiatry and Neurology in Abu Dhabi. So I saw 2 doctors, and they both said that he has autism after doing all the hearing checked and everything, because not responding to name was also there. So we had to rule that out.
But
as
there was
well.
communication. He was
No,
speaking.
No, he was not.
He was not.
Like Hina said, there was also a regression I saw at the age of 3. That he used to say some words before that, but then everything just, he stopped talking at all
Okay, so you got a clear diagnosis at 3.
at 3. Yeah.
At 3. So, Hina, how was because the journey of acceptance starts after the official diagnosis, when we are told in our faces that they are on the spectrum, and then early intervention. I think they go together, and it's very difficult because you're upset, you're depressed, it's a lot of crying, it's a lot of emotion. I've goosebumps recalling the moments because whenever you sit with a mother, it's it's emotional. So how did you cope up with the diagnosis while thinking about the next step, early intervention?
Incidentally, in my the building that I was living in, I had a co-mother who had an autistic son. She was a good guy. Like she gave me names, and I joined the support groups, and then I went to a BCBA, and the therapy started. She immediately told me to start with intensive therapies, and at that time, whoever is saying whatever, you just
overwhelmed.
follow that without thinking much whether it's going to be beneficial for you or not. Luckily for me, I was in the right hands, I feel, at that point in time, and the acceptance wasn't great, as for anyone.
It never
There
is.
Yeah, I was just throughout the 4 hours that I used to sit in the therapy center for 3-4 hours, and those 3-4 hours I used to be only crying. There was no but then I think it's important. I think you should let it go. You should
Take it out.
cry. You should take it out. I think there's no harm, there's no shame in crying out, because bottling it up is going to only worsen the situation.
Yeah.
So I think I did the right thing by crying it out. It made me more strong, because I've seen my husband who had bottled it up and he was in denial, though he was not stopping me, as I said, but he had become quiet.
I think everybody has their own coping
Yeah,
mechanism.
that's how he did it. But then of course it became easier as you meet others. I think it's very important when you share, when you're in the same boat, and then you share your stories, it becomes a lot easier, it becomes a lot better, because you draw strength from each other.
Yeah. So you started with ABA.
Yeah. ABA,
started with ABA.
yeah, intensive, 3 hours ABA, then used to be 1 hour of group session, then OT, speech,
So everything
everything, all the whole umbrella of therapies.
You started
I had
at 3.
Yes, 3.
Humaira, how was it with you?
Yeah, I had a nervous breakdown, to be honest, at that time. So I was sent back to Pakistan because our doctor recommended that you need help, plus he needs help. It's better to go in a, mixed environment where there are some cousins Umar can see and learn from.
Socialize.
So, yes, for socializing. So I went to Pakistan for a year. It was not easy because I was dealing with my own emotions, Plus, no one understood why I was there. People were asking me, the people in the neighborhood, that are you here for his treatment? What's his disease? Things like that.
Yeah,
They don't know
yeah,
what
yeah,
autism
yeah,
is. It was
yeah.
like back in 2015 when we initially got his diagnosis. So now that people know, they are more aware. But at that time, we started with OT, we started with speech. I couldn't find any ABA in Pakistan at that time, and some other remedial therapies, and also we put him in a nursery school over there, just for him to get to know some kids and socialize a little bit.
So you started basically in Pakistan.
Yeah,
you
I
went back.
started there.
So you think that going back to Pakistan with this thought that socializing might help him get better, did it?
No, it didn't. It didn't make much of a difference, but I got the support I needed because I was with family. So it's good to talk to people about something, even if they don't understand, but still you get to share.
Yeah.
So, which is something that you miss at that time.
Yeah.
When you're not with the family, you're alone here, and even your friends don't even understand what you're going through. The friends that you have.
Of course, obviously, because they can't relate.
Yeah, exactly.
That is why I say mothers who are on the same journey, you can relate
Exactly.
with them more.
Exactly.
So Hina, schooling, first thing when we get to know that the child is delayed, there's this pressure from the society, everybody's telling you, put them in a nursery, they'll go mingle in with the kids, they'll get better, take them to parks. So everybody, first thing like I did, put them in a nursery. And I remember when I used to go and pick them up, they will be cornered, playing on their own, and it used to just crush me. I was like, this is not right. But up till now, I see parents doing this because they think it helps. So you think that putting the child in nursery is important for the newer parents because that's the first thing that comes to mind. Oh, let's just put them in a playgroup, in a nursery, in where they can see normal kids and they might pick up. So do you think that's right?
I agree to it because I have seen it happening with my son. He, apart from doing therapy, he was also going to a nursery where incidentally it happened to be owned by someone who had an autistic son.
That was a
So
plus for you.
that was so she knew it.
Yeah.
And I also drew a lot of strength from her because she used to sit with me at times and guide me and tell her about her story. So again, I was drawing strength from her. Secondly, because I had two daughters, it's been a blessing. So Ibrahim was used to that kind of an environment where he knew what was, he was used to being around normal,
kids. Yeah,
typical
yeah,
children, and he continued to go to school where my daughters go. He, of course, is not at par with them. He's much behind. He's still in year 1. He should be in year 3 by now. But then we see the changes. Like he knows when he has to behave. When he has a meltdown, and his shadow teacher, who's a trained RBT, she says, look at your friends, they are looking at you. So he immediately tries to control his emotions. He tries. Of course, meltdowns is not, he cannot help it, but he does try. And this was told to me by my neurologist also, that you should put him in a normal environment, because then he will know he after all has to live in a normal world. He has to live amongst people like us. So he needs to know how to control his emotions. You cannot always have a special bubble for him all the time. So it's that thing stuck with me. So that's how I continued him in a normal school, though I do not know how long it will go on.
Yeah, because it's a struggle.
It
So
is a
you were
struggle.
lucky enough, the lady that Hina is referring to, she's no more with us. She was a special mother. She ran nurseries. She had a son who is a teenager
Krishna.
now.
Krishna.
He's also special. So you were lucky that you ended up in a nursery that knew. Most of the parents, they don't, like me. Hina, I know that Umar went to a mainstream school, and then now you're homeschooling him. So why you put him in a mainstream school and then why homeschooling now?
Well, after the nursery experience in Pakistan, we came back here, and then we were looking for a nursery here. So Umar started with a nursery in Abu Dhabi, but that experience was not that pleasant. He was very frustrated he was not getting any focused attention over there. They asked for a shadow teacher at that point in time when he was 4. So it was not easy for us to provide a shadow plus all the therapies and everything. So for I think 2-3 semesters we tried our luck with the nursery, but it didn't help. Then we started with an ABA program for him. Then after moving to Dubai, we started with an early intervention program here.
Okay.
So I'm just telling you the journey that how I went to mainstream eventually.
So you went to nursery and then ABA.
Yeah, an ABA. Then he was able to go into a early intervention program.
Okay.
It was in Umesukam here. I don't think that place is still there anymore. But after that, they said now he has outgrown the age of the early intervention. You should switch him to another center.
Okay.
So at that center, the teacher was a very kind lady. She said he's capable of going to a mainstream school. So that was her recommendation and her observation, which I totally agreed with, because the things that he was labeled with were not true. Because sometimes therapists are also not right. They are not seeing the child that the mother sees.
Okay.
Because I used to teach Umar at home, academics and everything, numbers. And I said that if he can do this, how can they put a label on him that says the opposite? So I tried my luck with the mainstream school here, and he got accepted in the first try. That was a very big step for us, and he did very well in grade 1 and in grade 2. Then COVID hit, and we were blessed to have a very nice LSA, plus the head of inclusion was very nice. And these children are very observant. They know when someone is really making an effort and is genuinely,
Yes,
it's a genuine person, so they really cooperate as well. I feel that personally. So Umar was very nice with the whole staff, and everyone was very nice. But after COVID, I think that his ear sensitivity or whatever it was, I'm not able to pinpoint. His eyesight got weak at home when he was watching the screens all the time. So after COVID, he was not able to sit in the school, not able to tolerate even 5 minutes in a classroom.
So he regressed.
He regressed badly because everything, stopped during COVID. No therapies, only the things that I took training for, I used to do it with him. Plus the online school was going on. So that's how I found out that maybe that's an option, that we can do an online school, a home school, if this doesn't work. I don't want to pressurize him and send him to school where he's having meltdowns 2-3 times a day.
Yeah.
So it's not healthy, neither for him nor for me. So then we made this big decision.
So you're homeschooling Umar
Now I'm homeschooling him since 2 years.
Hands down, homeschooling. Oh my goodness, it's a struggle in itself. I can imagine.
It is.
I can't even think about it because it's really difficult, because homeschooling it's entirely on you. Hina, I just wanted to ask you. You're saying that you went to nursery and then you went to ABA, and then what were the other things that helped you in the early years, like the first 3 years? Any dietary changes, any special social groups, or you were doing things yourself at home as well? Because there are a lot of options out there. Initially, as you said, you were so overwhelmed, you're reading and this and that, and so what were the things that you picked up, like, I'm going to try this? Like, there are people who are very particular about diet. They say they see miraculous changes when they do dietary changes. So what were the things that you were like very careful in the house, like no sugar in the house, like, for example?
Unfortunately, I have not been able to do dietary changes for Ibrahim at all. The only reason being he's a foodie. He loves food.
I
That
love
is his
He sounds like me.
reinforcement in life. You make him do anything, you show him food, you'll get this, and you'll do it, and he will do it. So, 2 things are his reinforcement: numbers. He's very fond of numbers, additions, or whatever, and food. So I cannot do dietary changes for him, also because I have 2 daughters who will not sacrifice on food. They do a lot of sacrifice for him. They will not make changes. So that's the thing. You can't discriminate, if you're giving donuts and other goodies to the other 2 children and not giving it to him.
Yeah.
It's not possible. So that's the only thing that I have not done: dietary changes and bio supplements. I have not done that. Rest, everything I have tried my hands on. Be it social groups, be it putting him, as I have already said, in nurseries, in school, with my daughter's friends. They are also very helpful. They, when they come, they make Ibrahim join them with dances. So they are very encouraging. So I'm very proud of these little girls, young girls now, who make him join them, and they are okay with it, because these days not everyone has a huge heart.
Yeah.
So I'm blessed with that kind of a support system that I've had. That these are the only things that I've done. I have tried to keep everything as normal as I can. He also gets scolding if he's not doing things right. He also gets a timeout if he is not listening to me. So whatever is applicable, I have tried to be as normal as possible with him, not making any special changes. So that's how has been my journey.
Yeah, because sometimes it happens, it becomes we become so paranoid that let's try this, let's try that, because that parent tried it and it worked. We completely forget that a child on the spectrum is different from the other child on the
If you
spectrum.
know a child with autism, you only know a
Yeah, one
child with
child.
autism. So,
So
what
having,
will work out with you may
yeah.
not work out with me.
Yeah.
So that sensibility needs to be there amongst all the new mothers who are facing this problem. You should always be aware of this, that what might work for the other person might not work for you. The gut feeling is very essential.
Yeah.
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 So that's
Okay. And Humaira, how do you think that you manage the social pressure? Because it's, I think, like in Hina's case, you're saying that people around you were very supportive, and I love that, because it helped you. I can
because
see.
I've chosen such people.
You,
Amreen.
yeah.
Mind you, my social circle is
I like
very
that.
limited. I filter those people. So that's how you have to be that strong enough to filter those kind of people.
You have to be strong. Yeah, strength come with time.
Yeah.
I think so.
It does.
So, Humaira, how did you manage social pressure? While you were managing Umar after COVID, and he regressed, because I'm sure it
was-
must have hit you really hard as
Yeah,
well.
it did. I stopped going to places where he was not comfortable, not meeting people who were not understanding of what we were going through. So this is the first step that every parent has to make, that you need to see and what he's comfortable with. You can't just pressurize him to go to school, to go to a social gathering or something like that. Even if it's a birthday party, he loves birthday parties, but when he gets over there, he gets very overwhelmed, because the way he's trying to communicate, he's still nonverbal. He has apraxia as well. So his hand flapping gets a little bit more out of hand. Sometimes he starts to close his ears. Then I have to move him out. So things like that happen. And
So how does Umar? I'm sorry to cut you. But
No,
how
no,
does
that's-
Umar communicates with you?
we use for structuring our day, we use the visual schedules. He has a PEX book, plus he has some different apps on his tablet and cell phone for communication.
So you've trained him.
He's not that trained. When he's frustrated, he's not willing to do anything. So sometimes I give him options like either choose this or that. I use my hands, like do you want this or do you want that? So because every time you don't have the cards, you don't have the
Yeah.
app. So
Yes,
this
I
is
agree.
something I do.
And I think when they're frustrated, they're not
They do.
interested in
No,
any kind of
no,
technology.
no.
Be it
Yeah,
whatever it is.
whatever
They
it
don't. They
is,
don't
no,
care.
they don't care.
And one more thing is, so when you talk about speech, what I have seen in the last, I'd say, 11 years now, parents are very, I don't know what's the word that I should use. They're very particular about the child speaking. I want him to speak. I want him to communicate. When I jumped into advocacy, I think the first question that I have from all the parents that'll come to me, how do we make them speak? So if you ask me, I think any form of communication, if they can use it,
valid.
it's a blessing. I don't care if it's words, I don't care if it's a tab or cards. If there is a form of communication, it could be any form of communication. How do we train parents on that words is not the only form of communication, and it's fine if your child is using sign language or a PEX file. It's more like a psychological war for the parents as well. So what do you think, how parents can be made comfortable with the fact that it's okay if your child is not uttering words, but he's using other forms of communication.
Gestures, I think this is what even the body language sometimes tells the parents. But I see what you're trying to make the point about, that parents need to understand that, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's best if they make them, aware, educate themselves that speech is not the only mode of communication. There are so many things besides speech, because this is what we have been using all our life. We don't know. We never went to the other options or alternate before.
We never thought about
That's the thing. So when you look into it, when I started exploring apraxia, and because everyone was saying after 6 months you will see a difference, after a year you will see a difference, but I didn't see any difference up till now. Maris, you can say pre-verbal or minimal verbal, but he's not fully functional verbal at this point. So now, to ease his, I think it's a decision that parents need to make in the beginning, that we need to teach the child. Start with PECs straight away, because some parents have this misconception that if you introduce cards, if you give them sign language, they will not speak.
Yeah.
This is only what you call scaffolding or something for support, that you are just supporting their communication.
Yeah.
Eventually, inshallah, speech will come. But at least let them have a say in the matter. Let them communicate, so that the behaviors, then we are talking about behaviors. Behaviors comes because they are not able to communicate. They are not getting the message through. That's why they start the screaming and scratching, biting themselves, self-injurious behavior. Everything comes, I think, because of the lack of communication. So I think it's very important.
As they say, each behavior is a form of communication.
Exactly.
They are
Everything,
trying to
even
tell.
breathing is a behavior, you can say.
Yeah.
So everything is a behavior, and it's communication, and it's a cry for help in this case. If you are looking at a child, particularly on the spectrum, and he's having this meltdown, that's a communication. There was so much overload, he's not getting to express himself. Even if you put a tape on your mouth and you have so much to say, so many things, because there is something. I follow this Jordan guy. He is a apraxia advocate, and I learned a lot from him. This is something that the parents can look into. That follow.
What's his name?
Jordan. I think Jordan Levan something. I'm not sure, but he's very. He shares his personal experience. That's how I get to know what Umar is feeling at that time. That if he is screaming, it tells me that he wants to say something and the words are not coming out of his mouth. So instead of disciplining him, I understand what this scream is all about. So this is something that the parents can do. Follow social media accounts of those people who are the self-advocates. You get to learn a lot from them, because they are going through this journey still. And they can teach a lot to parents.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. I think it's more about the parent, because a child is having a meltdown. You are at a public place. You are
looking at people.
You're breathless. You're looking at everybody, looking at you, and it becomes more about you. And you're completely forgetting that that child is having a meltdown because he needs help. So you're training yourself.
Exactly.
It's really important. I so agree with you. Hina, where is Ibrahim with communication?
He is not fully functionally communicative, but he uses his words. He does says what he wants. See, these children, they know how to, what they want. At that point in time, they will use all the words. They will all follow all the cues. Every instruction is crystal clear if it is in for their good.
Yeah.
If we are going to go to Magic Planet, see shoes, socks, everything matching, everything pinpoint. Let's go, Papa, Mama, Papa's key. Everything is done because it's in their interest.
Yeah.
So how should we bring about this change? How should we use this as a tactic to make them talk?
Yeah.
So this could be one thing. And another thing on the point that we were discussing earlier about communication, I read somewhere in a research paper that if the child is not talking by age 5, introduce other modes. Start off. Don't wait.
Wow.
Don't wait, because that will only hinder the communication. Use other form, pegboards, whatever it takes. I have seen mothers carrying, pegboards in their hands. And to use, you want this, you want that in the mall. Don't be afraid. Go ahead. And this is how communication will build. Don't be in denial or in the fear that if I'll do this, he might not speak. Don't wait for the age. It will happen, inshallah, but start as early as possible. Do not delay it any further. Use other mode of communication and let that build up his speech, inshallah.
So do not wait for the words to come.
Yeah,
Give
yeah,
them
yeah.
Any form of
Any form of communication is communication. So do not hinder, don't take it as a taboo. That I should not do this, otherwise he'll not
Oh my
speak.
God, what will
No.
people say?
And also I've seen mothers in my journey that, how have you told them that your child is autistic? Why are you labeling him? It's okay. If I have cancer, I will say I have cancer. If I have diabetes, I'll say I have diabetes. If he has autism, accept it. Unless you will not accept it, things will not move. And
I think recently this is a trend that labeling is, oh my God, it's not good. And I completely agree with you, because to me, if somebody asks me, oh my God, like, why are you calling him autistic? Like, call him neurodivergent, call him different. I'm like, it does not matter to me. Maybe it's just me, because he is autistic, he is different, he is neurodivergent. It does not matter to me. What matters to me and what matters to all of us as mothers is to help them make their life better. Labels do not matter to me. But again, it's a personal choice. I just ask you, Humaira, one, if you could give parents the roadmap quickly in 1 minute.
Empower yourself as much as you can. That's my whole journey is all about now. Because before I used to think that once I get through this, I will help others. But then I thought that it's a long journey. It's not going to end like in a year or two, because in the beginning we all feel that it's going to be like 2-3 years of therapy and that you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But after that, when that bubble bursts, it's a long journey. You have to educate others, especially the parents. They are the ones, especially the mothers. They are struggling the most.
Yeah.
They're running in so many directions. The therapist will give you a sensory diet. Some will say practice this much, give him these mouth massages. The speech therapist have their plans. OT has their plan. The mother has to make sure he follows all the plans at home as well, and that he gets to practice. So if the mother is not empowered, she doesn't know what's going on in the sessions and what the child's struggles are.
So how do you empower the mother? If you can
by
define it?
educating. Because there is so much material on the internet now, in the social groups, as you have seen before. There are Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups. There is bombardment of information. You have to pick and choose that what are my child's struggles, what does he need at this point in time. Not necessarily every child needs behavior therapy. Not every child needs physiotherapy. If the child is speaking fluently, he doesn't need speech. So that's the mother's decision. Which direction, what are the problems, where should I be heading? So this is something the mother needs to make herself aware, not just leave everything on the therapist or the doctors, that they'll make the decision, they'll do. I don't know anything about it. I didn't even heard the word autism before. I got to know after his diagnosis that there is something called autism. So I started educating myself. I took trainings for myself about sensory integration, about those visual schedules, and I have implemented those in my home as well with Umar. And I've seen some are a hit, some are a miss. So it's you
Hit
get
and
to
trial.
learn. Yeah, everything you have to try for yourself and see if this is something that would work with us or not. So this is something the mother needs to be aware of.
So anybody who's sitting in Uganda or anybody who's sitting in Russia, they have access to internet. So
Exactly.
you say that, get on there and filter it down.
Filter
because
it down.
there's
That's
a lot
very
of
important,
information.
filtering, because there's too much of information and too much of anything is not really good.
Yeah.
So even the support groups that we are part of, all of us are part of, you need not indulge into every information that is being shared. Mute the groups, ask ask whatever you want to ask, take in what you want to take. And obviously there's a plethora of information all around. So use what is applicable in your case. Do not just do something because someone else is doing it and is benefiting. Maybe you can give it a try, but it may not necessarily work for you. For example, I went to the medicine route also, because I had somebody told me that, it has worked wonders for my son, and he has started talking and he's reading Quran now. I was so overwhelmed because at that point I was very low, and I immediately rushed to that doctor. Okay. And then he started permutation, combination. Amreen, I cannot tell you. Every 2 weeks he would say, okay, no improvement, change the medicine. And I don't know how many medicines Ibrahim had at that point in time. My husband was not here in Dubai. He had gone to Saudi, and he was here alone with me. And me and my children were here in Dubai. And I went through a hell because Ibrahim's condition worsened with those medicines. Immediately, I had to wean off. You cannot even stop those medicines in a go, you have to wean it off. So it did not work for me. It did work for that mother, but it did not work for me. So it's okay. We should not blame anyone that, why did you give me this information?
But you got to know this only after trying the medicines.
Yes.
That's a glitch, because you try it only then you get to
only
know.
then, and then you lose precious years, precious time. And then it, of course, any psychiatric medicine has side effects.
Yeah.
So, and he was only 4 at that time. It's too young to try
But
it.
you were trying to help.
But that's all. That's all.
Yeah. Like in Humaira, I know Umar has self-injurious behaviors when he cannot communicate properly, and I was just looking at marks on your hands as well. How do you manage that? Because my twins also have self-injurious behaviors, and I personally feel it's the most difficult part of autism so far. They're 11. How do you manage that? And do you believe that at certain point you might move towards medicine to calm him down, because he's preteen, he's growing up? So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, if it's totally necessary, then I will definitely start a medicine for him. But he's been recently diagnosed with epilepsy. So there is one medicine that already started, and then it's working fine up till now. Because sometimes they also have very adverse reactions. Omar got a very horrible reaction to the epilepsy medicine even. So he was in emergency again. So for those behaviors, we have to see and do, because every autism mom, I think they have to be a very good investigator. What's going on
All
with the
of us
child?
are, yeah.
What's going on? If they're not able to tell us, we have to investigate. If it's a medical problem, and I like to do some research. Whenever I see some behaviors, if he's closing his ears too much, if he's having this behavior where he does this, that tells me he is having a headache. So things like that, I try to ask him, and then try to get a yes or no from him, that do you have a headache? So now I've trained him that much that he says headache. If there is a headache, he will say headache. So then we have this headache medicine, because most of the behaviors that come out very badly is when he's in pain.
Because they can't
Whether
express.
it's a headache or a toothache, which are two things which are unbearable for my son. So these things I am very, and that's when I get all scratched out, that I know that he'll get very upset about it. So these things I usually look out for. Plus, if he's having some issues with the ear, I immediately take him to the doctor to see an ENT, get his ears checked if there is an infection. So this is something I do, like this is my routine now. If I see something even a little bit, I run to the doctor. I don't make it worse. Because when it gets worse, it's difficult to go and sit in the waiting room to see the doctor, to get him cooperate for a blood test. And if he's already sick, I don't wait for that time for him to get really sick. So this is something.
You mentioned epilepsy. Since Umar is in preteens now, quickly, epilepsy, was it like a silent epilepsy, or there were physical symptoms?
It was a very big episode of seizure he had last year, and it was totally out of the blue, unprovoked, you can say. He was just watching his tablet at night, and I fell asleep, and I heard some jerking movements. I thought maybe he's stimming. And when I woke up, he was jerking very badly. His eyes were up. It was a horrible sight. I don't want to recall it even. And it lasted for like, I don't know, 2-3 minutes. But it was like hell for us. So we took him to the emergency room. There was nothing anyone could do over there. But they just let him sleep. And then we brought him back. So we did an EEG at that time, and nothing was found. But and Alhamdulillah, 13 months passed, and then again he had one episode in last year in October, and then after a month in November. So that's the close seizures. So then the doctor did a 12-hour EEG, and then they found some, what do you call, some different abnormality in the brain of those triggers. He said that everyone has those, but this clearly shows signs of epilepsy. So that's when we started with the medicine. We didn't start after the third seizure. We started with the meds.
So you waited.
We waited. Even the doctor was saying that it's fine. The two seizures were like 13 months apart. And sometimes some things can trigger those, so you never know what can trigger. So it's better to start on the medicine.
Always keep an eye.
Yeah, exactly,
Always keep an eye. Hina, to all the new parents, what is the roadmap that you would suggest? I mean, a parent, since you are an experienced parent now, so a new parent comes to you and asks you, Hina, I just got to know my child has autism. What do I do?
The first and foremost thing which I would tell any parent is acceptance. Take it. Don't deny it. Take it. It's okay. It's okay. We're all in the same boat and we are all there to support. So it's okay. Acceptance. Second, start with the therapies. The earlier, the better. And educate, as Humaira's already told. You have to learn yourself. Don't just depend on the therapist. Learn and train yourself also, so that you could see the child is with the therapist for 45 minutes, 1 hour maximum, out of which I'm doubtful if the whole 60 minutes is utilized. So educate yourself so that you could replicate those therapies at home. Invest a lot into play therapy. Play as a young child is extremely important, extremely, and don't invest in sound and music and all that kind of toys, simple toys which is good for their gross motor skills, and take them out, take them to beaches, take them to the parks. Sensory, very, very essential. Playing barefoot in the sand, in the grass, on the beach, very, very important. Even if they are not, don't force them to play with children. Even if they are there parallel playing, they are very observant. Very observant,
smart,
very smart. You may not notice, but they observe. So let them be. Even if they are being cornered, it's okay. It's okay, but they are watching. Don't worry. So these things are very important. Acceptance, and it's okay to cry. It's absolutely fine to cry and to vent out. It's all right. It's normal. So these are the three, four things that I would say. Of course, educating yourself is the most important thing.
And prioritizing your mental health.
Oh, of course. This is a separate topic.
It's a big topic.
Very, very important. We, she just mentioned, autistic parents, autism moms are investigators. We're not just investigators. We are, combat soldiers.
Exactly.
We have that
Combat
strength
veterans.
of a combat soldier. The stress that they go through, we go through the same. We are detectives, investigator, combat soldiers, therapists. We are everything, and we are their biggest advocates. Okay. So these are the things. While doing all this, we are also struggling with our own mental health. We are mentally exhausted, emotionally drained, and all this eventually boils up to our physical health. So this is a fact, and we have to. I do not know myself what the solution could be for this. Maybe having talks like this, maybe being a support to each other, and maybe having someone who could, have a counselor or something who
and
could
even
help
getting
us.
help from therapy.
Yeah.
No harm.
No harm.
Like, let's just normalize that as well. If you need to go and talk to a psychologist, there's no harm. There's a lot of taboo with that as well, because there's a lot for us to take on, because it's a lot of pressure. Like,
we
you have
worry
this
so
weight.
much. We worry about future so much. What after us? Each one of us have this question.
Yes.
What will happen after us? So this worry, how do we deal with it? What should we do for securing this future? What should we do about our child's safety? So these are the things, these are the thoughts, and we have to work around that. I mean, I'm sure.
But there's always a way. There's always a way.
There's always a way. We have to work on it.
Yeah, I agree. Humaira, children who stim, clap, make loud noises. Yeah, we are in the same boat.
Yeah.
You go to a mall, the whole mall is looking at you, and because our kids look absolutely fine, since autism is an invisible condition, and we live in a country, UAE, that is trying to be really inclusive, and I feel really blessed, and I really want to mention it here. Dubai is inclusive. I am so blessed. We are actually blessed to be living in a country. But when you go out in a mall and your child is sitting in a restaurant, all of a sudden he'll start clapping because he's happy, or he'll have a meltdown because he doesn't like the fries with chili on it. How do you cope up with that outside when people stare at you? And again, it varies from parent to parent. I am okay with that because I'm like, okay, fine, he's different, you want to see, more than welcome. But sometimes it gets too much, and because getting out of the house is a struggle in itself for us, and since I have to, it's double the struggle. But I am walking the mall like this, and I don't care now. But what would you like to say to the new parents? How do they manage that?
It will take time. You can't expect a new parent to go anywhere, and if the child is acting out, or what the others call it, we call it stimming. So they try to hide their child, or just try to take them back to the car or something. But now we are now experienced parents. We have moved past that point. It doesn't bother me at all. It's fine. He's like this. Unless he's having a real issue where he needs to be be removed from that environment, it's triggering something in him that's bringing a meltdown, then I would definitely intervene with my son, not with the others that they are looking. I don't care anymore, because until he's happy, that's fine. I'm not bothered if he's having a clapping episode or he's laughing loudly. It's fine. I'll join him. I start laughing. Oh wow, Umar, you're happy. Oh, that's fine. What are you happy about? Give me a high five. This is how I do it. This is how I deal with it now.
I mean, get the confidence to take your
you
child
have
out,
to be confident. If you are feeling pressurized or nervous, they can sense it. Your children can sense that, and they will also think that something is wrong with me. So, why am I doing this? Why my mother is getting embarrassed of my actions? So you have to be the strongest advocate. So unless he's in pain, if he's happy, join them. That's what I say and recommend.
See, I'll suggest one thing. What I had done with Ibrahim was, I used to, he would not sit in the restaurant. He runs. Ibrahim elopes.
They love running, no?
He just
Most
runs.
of them,
And I don't know, he elopes. So he would run. So what I started doing was, at that point in time, I was living in Barsha, and off-peak hours, around after lunch, 3ish, 4ish, I used to take him to the restaurant.
Oh, I used to do the same.
And make him sit there. Let him there aren't many people around there. So we made it a routine. And then he got used to it. And then we started also recreating the restaurant environment at home and doing it. So this, how he got used to it. Now he is absolutely fine. So this is something which was told to me by my BCBA. Take him. And then I was like, no, what will people say? He makes so much of loud noises and all that. First and foremost, now I tell the restaurant people to give me disposable plates and glasses, okay, so that there is less noise. And of course, now that he's used to it with so much of so many years of training, so many months of training, that now he's okay. Similarly about parks, similarly about birthdays, we used to start having birthday parties at home. Just bring cake, candle, balloons, just birthday parties. So now he's used to going to the birthday party. I don't take him for 3-4 hours. I take him towards the end only. So that's how that he gets the feel of it. So don't try to exclude your child from such environment. Make him part of it. People will not include you. You have to yourself push in.
No, I love that.
So don't let, you have to make your space yourself.
You have to fight for it.
People will not make the way for you. So that's how it is going to be.
And I completely agree. I think it's more about the parent, because you're nervous. Some parents are embarrassed as well. Oh my God, he's gonna stim and people will look at me, and some of them will even laugh. I mean, some of them will bully them. It's the confidence that I think comes with time as well. But I completely agree. My sons used to run away, so we used to go to malls that were less busy in weekdays, and just leave them, go run. And then there was a point they used to turn and look, they're like, oh, why mama is not running after me? Now, alhamdulillah, with a lot of practice and exposure, they just walk behind me. I mean, there are days when they run away.
The exposure
that
is the
that
key.
is what makes them special.
Exposure is the key.
Yeah, exposure is the key. So both of you are at the doorstep of teenage now. So we see a lot of support and help and talks about early intervention for the younger kids. Teenage is another scare. So how are you gearing up for that?
We are already there. So
I've just started.
we started it, and it's not an easy ride.
Yeah.
Like you can imagine, even his neurologist told me that 2-3 years are going to be really hard for you.
Puberty.
Yeah, puberty is going to be hard because even the neurotypical teenagers have a really hard time. So you can imagine a neurodiverse child, especially nonverbal, how will he react to the changes he's seeing in his body, in his mind, and in his hormones and whatnot. We don't know what he's experiencing. So we have to educate ourselves again about puberty, and also to have some sort of talks with him, show him some videos where he can, get to know that it's okay.
Prepare him.
To prepare him as well. Parents need to be prepared, but the child needs to, learn as well, because he can't ask any questions. So that's the key. You have to educate the child as well through videos even.
Yeah.
Show him some pictures,
Most
or
of them,
if they can read, provide a book. This is something that can respect their privacy as well. That mama is not going to tell me these private things. I can read about it myself.
Yeah. So you use whatever mode of information
Yes,
can help
my
the
son
child.
loves books. He's a visual learner, so he loves to see picture books. He likes to read, so I provide him with as much books as I can. In every room, he has a bookshelf. He can
That's nice.
pick and choose whatever
That's
he
lovely.
wants. Yeah.
That's lovely.
That's lovely.
That's lovely. Yeah. Hina, one thing that you would suggest to the normal society listening to you right now to make things better for our special individuals. One thing that you wish could change to make things easy.
As you're speaking this, now I'm thinking about the everyday park trip that I go to in my community. Ibrahim loves the swing. He just swings and that's all he does. And the children come, why is he not leaving the swing? So I educate them. Wouldn't it be better that we educate our normal children about these neurodivergent children instead of doing the other way around? Why not educate our normal kids?
It's the key.
That if we do that, the world would be a better place for these children.
So you have 2 daughters who are neurotypical. So do they advocate for their brother?
Yes, big time.
Oh.
Big time, because these days it's become a fad to call anybody autistic.
Yeah.
If you're aware of this, because young teenagers, don't behave autistic, don't do this. This is their slang now. So my girls are very sensitive to this. So whenever their friends use such phrases, they immediately stop them and say, don't use it so loosely. So they are an advocate. I'm proud of them.
Oh, that's adorable, because you have trained them that way.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of you for that as well. Humaira, we struggle with advocacy. Like we have come a long way. It's better than before, but it's still a long road, especially with kids who are non-speaking, who have high behavior. We struggle when we go out. So what do you think, what's the systematic changes that we can bring in, for example, in Dubai? Like, we are seeing changes. We have POD, people of determination counters. But I'll just give you an example quickly. I go to the supermarket that is a POD counter, and though they, since they look so fine, so I'll be like, my son is POD, and they'll be like, are you sure? And I was like, do you want me to tell him to punch you in the face, and only
or a
then you
stimulator
know?
for you.
Yeah, So, the insensitivity that we have in the society, how we can work on that. I mean, I am a very big fan of sunflower lanyard or anything that can represent invisible disability, but then there is a school of thought that no, it excludes them. So what do you think can be done? 1 or 2 things that can strengthen advocacy in the normal side of the society, the normal typical people.
I think the staff trainings would help. Like we did back 2-3 years back, I collaborated with the ABTI for a they were training the hospital management and the staff over there for special needs. So this is something that's happening now in those adventure parks, and they know that this child is autistic. He'll be having some special needs and some sensory differences from the rest of the children. So these trainings are now a norm in the European countries, and
And even in Dubai,
even in Atlantis, and Dubai Autism Center is giving some trainings to all those organizations, like in hospitals even, I think, and some adventure parks. So I think for supermarkets and big like Lulu, the Carrefour, they should do the same, because these places are the and hospital, even airports I have seen.
Yeah,
There's
Dubai Airport is amazing.
We just traveled through Terminal 3. So with the sunflower lanyard, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Everyone was able to help Omar, and even but in the plane there was not that much help. But
There's nothing
there is
that you can
something
do.
You can do in the
Yeah,
yeah,
there's
but
nothing you
still
can do.
I would appreciate if there is a seat somewhere
Yeah.
secluded where he's
That's a whole
if he's
debate.
if he's moving too much, so people say that he's misbehaving, he should be still. So I think trainings are very important.
And at the grassroots level, I think.
Yes.
You know, school campaigns.
I think very, very
school
important.
campaigns.
School campaigns.
School, every class should have a class. When they have their moral education, they should have the normal children. They are the ones, their peer group.
Yeah.
It's the most important part. If they will be trained, it'll be a much better world for our children.
Yeah, training the grassroots level.
Grassroots, from the school.
Last message of hope to the new parents.
There is light at the end of the tunnel. So be positive and be consistent, and you will see great results. That's my message.
Work on your child.
Manifestation, very important. Positive manifestation. He will be fine. I will be fine. We will be fine. So unless we don't have this manifestation, we will be going downhill. So we have to think high and hope, inshallah, things will be better.
We are surviving. We will survive.
We will
Actually,
survive.
Thank you so much, ladies. It was just 1 hour. It's never enough. And I'll hope to see you again in some other episode as well. Thank you so much for your time. And to all of you listening, I hope the episode was amazing. I enjoyed it. And there's a lot to be talked about. But one thing that I always say, take care of your mental health, because you are the leading light of your child's life. And until the next episode, take care of yourself, and lots of love and tons of power to you and your child. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing.